Closer?
Yeah, that's great.
Is this good? Okay. Okay, hi everyone. Thanks for coming out. This is like the first time something like this has happened at the school, so it's an exciting time to be alive. So my name's Devansh, this is Sarah, this is Keshav, this is Lucy. Still two, not
A lot of competition.
Yeah, okay, my bad, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we are part of the team that worked on the surface tension installation. So this is our presentation that's basically about how we moved through the project, different obstacles we had to overcome, how we worked together as a team coming from different backgrounds, the highs, the lows, and the smiles at the end. So we can get started. Okay, so the project was conceived through the Makerspace. Every year the Makerspace hosts a design challenge. Last year the challenge was for students to come up with some sort of interactive art installation that merges engineering and art together. And the prize for the competition would be for students to be able to work on their prototype as an internship over the summer. Yeah, so I got together with a buddy and we worked on our prototype, just the two of us. We did pretty well. Our prototype is on the left, and we did well, and we got the opportunity to work on our installation. If you have any questions, this is like super informal. If you have any questions throughout the whole thing, just ask your question. We're not formal at all. Yeah, so the prototype is on the left-hand side, and in our presentation we basically said if you can extrapolate this one triangle to a wall of triangles, this is our vision for the installation. So we won the competition, and then we knew that coming into the summer we were paired with two art students. And the four of us would have to work throughout the summer and develop the concept much further into like a final design. So on our first week, we met our two artist friends and we started it.
Hello everyone. Okay. I'm the friend. So Lucy and I heard about this opportunity 2 weeks before our contract started. We got a call from artists, we were submitting portfolios, and anyways, I guess we did a good job and we got it. But Lucy and I didn't know that each other was going to be part of this over the summertime. So going into the project, I had really no expectations. I knew that I was going to be making a work of art for the university, but I knew I was going to have to talk to engineers. I didn't have any engineering friends before this opportunity. My cousin's an engineer, but other than that, I stayed on my side of campus. But yeah, so the first day that we all met, it was a little awkward. We had to form our teams on the spot, so we drew numbers. Doesn't make any sense. What do we do? Straws or names out of a hat? And I called dibs on Lucy because I kind of saw a bit of her work in the past, and I knew that it would, I think we would mesh a little better. But yeah, so anyways, the group got started, and the first thing we had to do was to really get a hold on how we were going to communicate together and how we were going to spend 4 months working together. So if you see the image on the projector, that's a really messy mind map we did together. It was the first week we were all working full time. So I thought it would be a good idea, we all did, if we would go to the library, pick images that would kind of represent works that we were interested in or what we were kind of expecting out of this. So it's really messy and it's incoherent. I have no idea what that is now, but at the time it made a lot of sense. And it was the first way that we were kind of communicating and seeing how we work best.
So in this earlier image, I came into this project with this. This is my project that I've worked on for a couple of months now, and I have my own expectations. Now I'm in a group of 4 other students, and everybody has their own expectations, and now we need to learn to work all together. So throughout the summer, we would have meetings with the administration that was kind of managing the project. And early on, they could see that we were having some difficulties communicating amongst our own group. And because we were kind of like brave enough to put these issues out on the table and say, you know, we are having these issues and there is some friction. I think that helped us overcome the friction rather than just like sweeping it under the rug and pretending like it doesn't exist. We kind of acknowledged it and we said, okay, yeah, we have different backgrounds and let's kind of use that to our advantage instead of not acknowledging it.
And I think, I was just going to add, I think that our managers were a little worried the first month because we hadn't produced a lot of physical things yet, but it was really important, and I think the reason why we were successful in the end was because we learned how each other was working and how to communicate. But yeah, and what was really great about these meetings, I was going to say, is, no, it's okay. We would have like weekly follow-ups with our managers, so if we were lost about stuff, they could be of help to us. And we had artists that were coming in to sort of look over what we had done so far, as well as like engineers to make sure we were on the right track. So a big learning curve for Lucy and I was to be able to collaborate on our first project together. It's really common that artists are very isolated, they have their own projects, their own ideas, and they typically work alone, and we don't get a lot of experience working with others, and also just, it's mostly at the very end when you're actually presenting the work or talking with your professor that you have any kind of communication with people.
So another thing that we realized was that Sarah and I, though we are from different areas, she's mostly focusing on photography as well as I'm focusing on sculpture and more the three-dimensional aspect. Sorry about that. Anyways, so as you can see to your right, so that is my sculpture, the one that I focused on, and it is mostly based on a more biology-based. It's focusing on more this one particular flower, and I wanted to reflect that and show it in a very three-dimensional way using mylar as well as metal. And in Sarah's project there, I'll pass this along to her.
Sure. Almost all the work I do is it's flat, it's photo-based. I like to make composites and collages out of multiple images, so I'll take them, make a work out of it afterwards, but so everything I do is quite flat, and I think that the reason why this was really successful was because we're coming from different areas of interest. There's not as much, we weren't bonking heads that much. At the very beginning, it was just kind of learning how to talk to each other as well. So this is an image of us getting to see the STEM building for the first time when it was under construction. And at this point, we were envisioning where our project was going to be installed. And before we could really get down to figuring out what the piece was going to look like, we had to figure out what we were working with. So we had a couple different locations in mind, and nothing was really set in stone. It was all up in the air because every week they would kind of install a new thing, and we didn't have much control over that.
So these are a couple of different possible places that we could put it. So the first image is actually right over here with the coat closets are now. Until maybe a month before the opening of the building, we were dead set that this would be over here, and then we got plans that could be a coat closet here. So then we decided we had to move. We never really thought about putting it under the stairs for a long time, just because we didn't know how we would fasten it, and we were getting a lot of backlash from the facilities managers.
I was going to say the architects, that was their focal point of this building, so they were very protective of their work, which is expected. So if proposing that was not really their number one option.
Yeah, we didn't want to step on the architect's toes. This is like they made a $50 million building in a year and a half, and our little project, we didn't really want to destroy their work. So this wasn't our first option, but it ended up being the best option. And every time we would come into the building, we would, on the last image, there'd be a new piece of equipment in the space, and that would really hinder how we could kind of visualize the piece in the building. So coming into the project, we wanted to make something that was kind of cool and that kind of just moved really cool and was nice to look at, but it didn't really have a theme or like a purpose behind it. Coming from an engineering background, we don't really talk about what kind of what's the subject of your project or what kind of message are you trying to give. We just want to make sure that it works and that it looks cool. Working with the artist, they say we can do that, but we should also make sure that it says something. And that was like a big revelation that I didn't really understand, and it was a big obstacle that we had to overcome.
Yeah, so it took a little bit to get everyone on board with this idea. I think the main reason was because they're almost opposite ways of going about the project. So for Lucy and I, we were really set on getting the research and the paperwork and sort of writing a thesis about the idea of it, and then the engineers were prototyping, and making sure the mechanics were going to work properly. So we had to get everyone on board with that, and it was a little difficult because we had some other engineers that unfortunately didn't get the opportunity to do the co-op, but they were helping just as much as us, and they were working in the evening, so Lucy and I both didn't see them very much. And they were so invested in the project, and they didn't really know where we were coming from. So there was there was some conflict for a bit, but once we were all on the same page, it was great. But yeah, so Deb, did you want to explain your idea formally?
Okay, so this is an image from, this is called Hyposurface. This is made by a team at MIT, and it's very simple. It's a similar idea where it's like a wall that has these kind of actuators on the back that helps the surface of it move. But this is kind of used as like a display, and you can like write words on it. It's kind of used for a different application. And we really like the way that this piece moved and kind of had this flow to it, even though there was such a structured, like rigid piece. So we like the idea of it being rigid, but still moving in a free-flowing manner. And this is the kind of one idea that we wanted the whole piece to revolve around.
And yeah, the guys kept mentioning they wanted it to undulate and flow like water. So Lucy and I really kept that in mind when we were thinking about what direction we were going to go into. And it was also really important to think about how the piece was going to function in this building. And we really wanted the work to connect back to the building. So I think from there, having those points in mind, we thought that incorporating science into the mix would be a good backbone for it. So we thought that doing research on water would be great, just because it formally sort of goes into that motion of moving and smoothly like water. So we started doing research with our fabulous bio student, Laura Weller, in the back there. Hey. And anyway, so we asked Laura to come help out because Lucy and I are bio students. We have no experience with any of the technology, as well as we don't study it, so we didn't really know a thing about it other than the fact that it looks beautiful. So Laura was very helpful, and we all started taking samples from the Ottawa River, and from there we thought it would be great. Well, I was really pushing the idea of taking photographic images of it, being a photo student. So we started taking samples, looking at it underneath the microscope, and as you can see on the left, that's one of the images. It's just a nice kind of reference, but yeah, so the team split off into two. The engineers were working on their prototypes, and Lucy and I were doing a lot of playing around and researching, but that's when things got kind of messy because we weren't really communicating that much, and the guys at that point had a lot more to show than us, and I think you guys were a little in the dark about which direction we were going to go, and yeah. So anyways, on the left here's a photo of us getting samples. I'm not enjoying myself. Laura was the best at getting the samples. And yeah, so I think once we got all the samples, we decided to make a image collage out of them. And it was just gonna be photographic, and we were thinking we were gonna scroll it on top of the machine. And Dev, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about how you guys were doing prototyping-wise?
Yeah, so while this was all going on, we had to make sure that the mechanisms were going to work, so we spent a lot of time doing that. And this kind of like breaking off into two groups, there was like a leap of faith that, okay, we trusted that the other group was going to get their stuff done, and they trusted that we were going to get our stuff done. So I think this trust that we built over the time, even though we had all this friction, was like a milestone in my head of how we were able to be successful.
So once Lucy and I made an idea of this image collage, we proposed it to the engineers, and they thought it was good, but they wanted to have more of a sculptural element. So from there we started prototyping, and this is a image of a failed prototype that we made. We worked on it for like way too long, and anyways, we had this sort of, I can't remember what the material is called now, but it's very malleable. We sat it on top of the image. Anyways, we noticed that it started looking like cheddar cheese, so we thought we would paint it and make it black to get that idea out of people's heads. So we presented it, and the first major comment we got was that it looked like an oil spill, and that's not what we were going for at all. What we wanted was to have this idea of like showing an ecosystem with all the images, and to I think we didn't want it to have an oil spill. We didn't want some PSA piece out of this. So anyways, we had to rethink our piece completely. Lucy, did you want to talk about how we recovered from that?
So basically, we went from having what looked like cheddar cheese and an oil spill to what you're seeing right here, to your left. It is a design of the organisms that we took, and we simplified them into an illustration. And then to your right there, you're seeing the wall that we mounted that image onto.
Okay, so there's a lot of stuff here. The triangles, we decided to use triangles because just like mechanically it moves easier having 3 points of contact. We decided to go with a wall using the hyposurface inspiration, but also that if we needed to move it to other places, we could just kind of pick it up and move it up. There are the holes in the walls so that if we needed to service anything, we would be able to take one panel off and get to the back. And everything is made out of as thin aluminum, easily accessible materials.
So once we came up with our illustration, we had to think about this sculptural element that we still wanted to implement. And we realized with the prototype that we made that was a flop that we didn't want to have LED lights, but we wanted to have something that I guess would play with light. So we ended up coming up with the idea of using plexiglass because it's really subtle. You would still see all the illustrations well, but it would refract the light very similarly to the way water would, and it just sort of pulls that idea back. And anyways, yeah, here are some images of the prototype that we did and the first time putting it on the frame. And this frame, it's kind of hard to see in the image, but that frame is the actual one that we have for the machine. But yeah, so anyways, we kind of had the major elements that we wanted to incorporate into the work, so that was great. Yeah.
So once our theme and kind of crux of the whole project was finalized, we said, okay, now we need to make sure that all the mechanisms are working, and everything takes longer than we expected. We think we're smarter than we are, so confirming all the mechanisms and making sure that everything was going to work took longer than we wanted it to. And I want to say that we probably finished all the prototyping and was ready to kind of start manufacturing for the final piece like halfway through August. Our contract was for the end of August, so we weren't going to make the deadline. And this piece needed to be ready for September 20th, which was the opening of this building. So we pushed back our final deadline to the 20th. And we worked throughout, like even after our contract was over. So on the right-hand side, these are 3D printed components that we designed ourselves that are on the actual piece. On the middle, that's image tracking software that Keshav wrote. That we have a Xbox Connect on the top of the piece, and when it's in this Connect mode, you can move along the piece, and the panels that are in front of you will also react to where you are in relation to the wall. And on the left is the final prototype for the one panel. And then once everything was confirmed, we said, okay, now we need to really ramp up and make sure that we get everything manufactured in the way that everything needs to be manufactured and everything needs to be assembled. And we assembled the whole thing in here, actually. So the image on the right is this room. Later on the floor, all the different panels with all the hardware and the 3 different frames that we put together.
And on the left, these are all our wrapped pieces of plexiglass. So originally, when we did the prototyping for this plexi, we did it in my oven. So we just heated up the plexiglass and then warped it by hand. And we thought that we were going to have a more professional formula for going about this. We didn't come up with anything that was going to work, so we ended up just using because she lives in an all-inclusive home, so that was great. So anyways, over the course of 2 days, we were just like popping in plexiglass. it was really hilarious. So anyways, it was about 97 pieces that we had to warp by hand. So it was really crunch time. And during this time was while we were building everything and making sure everything was good to go, was when we came up with the concept, really, because we had all of these pieces together, but they were very, very separate, and we didn't even have a title at the time. We were still extremely lost. So anyways, like as we're doing all this, we're all trying to think about this because we need to have one by the time we're presenting, right? So anyways, Laura texted us the one day, always saving the day. Anyways, and she texted us with the name surface tension, and it really fits quite well into the project just because it is surface tension is when water molecules bond together and they create a strong surface that like bugs and other things can go on top of, and it kind of functions like a wall. And I think, I don't know, it kind of brings back the science, engineering. Yeah, I think it was really good. So anyways, but it was very, very last minute, as could be expected, I guess, with like a 4-month project. But
yeah, it was a good name. I like the name.
yeah.
Okay. Is this gonna work? Let's try. Let's see if this works. So while we started to assemble, we had a lot of things that we needed to put together, and I think it was a unique time because, okay, it's fine, whatever. Everybody, we didn't really, like I was no longer considered one of the engineering students, she wasn't considered one of the art students. Everyone was doing whatever needed to get done to make sure that we met the deadline, and everybody was working sort of like around the clock. So this is a time lapse of us putting all the panels onto the wall. It's fine. It's a cool time lapse though. Oh, you can? Sweet. Thank you. I think if you click it, it opens up a drive link, and that's what it should do.
Yeah, while we were doing all of the manufacturing and piecing everything together, it was actually in this room. So it was kind of like a big fishbowl. People were checking out the building for the first time. Sorry, thank you. Why are you holding this for me? So yeah, people were coming in and out, and if we couldn't be ready for when our due date was, we could at least show people what to prepare for and what we were working on. So that was really fun. Deb was really nice and always letting people in. I wasn't as friendly, but I'm still smiling. Yeah.
Yeah, as people were walking around, people didn't really know about the project and they didn't know what was going on. So it was nice to kind of be like, hey, there's this cool opportunity that, you know, around the corner in Makerspace is there's a cool place to hang out, and there's a lot of stuff that really, really expensive equipment that we should be grateful that we have access to for free. So I'm trying to get people to go and just walk in and hang out for a little bit. So finally, September 20th comes around. We were working till like maybe 2 that night, make sure everything was good. And then we wanted to come in at 7 to make sure that everything, do some final tests before the big event, make sure everything was running smoothly. So one of my other friends who's working on the project, I texted him, I said, hey, let's get to school at 7, make sure that, you know, do a final test. Minister Duncan, Minister of Science, and Minister of Science is gonna come in real early in the morning, and, you know, everything needs to be working when she walks into the room, so let's make sure. It was 7 o'clock rolls around, I text him, no reply. 7:15, 7:30, we're getting a little bit nervous now. 7:45, he wakes up and says, hey, I just woke up and I'll be right there. I said, dude, Minister Duncan's gonna be here in like 20 minutes. We haven't done any testing, and this is like super stressful. Anyway, so she comes in from this main doors right behind you. We were supposed to be the first stop, but instead I told the administration, I said, hey, we're not gonna be ready. Can you walk her around the other way and make sure that she's at the last stop on her trip? So everyone's getting stressed out now, and nobody's really happy with us. And they say, okay, fine, whatever. She walks around, she finishes from the makerspace, and as she's turning around the corner, Buddy walks in, he plugs the laptop in, presses go on the software, and everything comes to life as she walks into the room. So it was like a big movie moment. Everything worked out though. The day was a big success. The piece was running for 8 hours throughout the whole day. I want to say maybe 200-300 people came into the room and were really excited about it. And it was nice to see that 4 months of our work, and we experienced a lot of highs, a lot of lows, but this was definitely one of like the best experiences also.
Yeah, and it was really crazy because that was the first day that I think we all really saw it moving and complete, and it was just like super shocking for us because we just seen everything on the floor for so long, or the tables, all bits and pieces. But it was really fabulous. We could talk about our work, and we could kind of relax because September had rolled through, and we had to kind of start thinking about school again at that point. So anyways, it was really great. And this is like was it the same day? This is in the evening. So anyways, we had like a little after party, and this is majority of our team. And as you can see, we're very, very smiley because we're gonna miss each other, and we're a little sick of each other as well, but mostly missing. But yeah, it was great. And unfortunately, we can't show you what the piece looks like right now because it's in the construction zone, but here's some images of what it looks like. And here is a close-up of the illustrations and whatnot.
Yeah, so this was a big learning experience for everyone. There was a podcast that the faculty hosts, and we were talking about, reflecting back on ourselves 4 months, like at the beginning of May when the project was first started. What would we say to ourselves, and what did we kind of learn from this big experience? And for me personally, it was a pleasure to kind of work with someone who, my whole life I sort of worked with people who were similar, who were like-minded, and to get the opportunity to kind of humble myself and be like, I'm not as smart as I think I am, and there's other people who are way smarter than me, and know things that I had no idea about. Was a great experience.
Yeah, so I think after this project, I really started taking my practice a lot more seriously. I'm preparing for my graduate right now, and I think this project was really good for sort of getting me to stick to timelines and to be a lot more mature, I think. I got my hands on a lot more equipment that I had never been exposed to before. So now I'm working a lot more in new media, and I don't think I would have gotten into that if it weren't for this project. But But I think the main thing that Lucy and I could probably say we learned was just like teamwork. We were always working on our own in our program, so this was really, really good because we had to do a lot of administrative work. We're always communicating with each other. We had to be ready for presentations. We both got a lot better at talking, and that was great.
Oh yeah, one thing I did learn was that the creative process that engineers have compared to art students is very different. The way my creative process works is that every time I think of an idea, I think right away, is this feasible? Can I do this? Is this possible? While with art students, they're a lot more uninhibited in that way. All their ideas flow freely. While us, it's very locked down, and I found that having these two art students really helped open me with my ideas and getting more stuff done, yeah.
Last but not least. Anyways, so what I ended up learning was I got my hands on a lot of equipment, a lot of software that I wouldn't have usually gravitated towards, that I ended up learning, as well as Sarah mentioned earlier, teamwork. Us art students, we are so isolated even from each other, and we aren't promoted to work as a team until maybe 4th year, and up until then it's solo and creating your own work and focusing on your own practice. So it was really a wonderful experience, not only working with Sarah, but also working with engineers, Devansh and Keshav, and being able to be a part of a team.
Cool, thanks for listening. If you have any questions, it's a pleasure. Thank you.